Hello, everyone, and welcome to my critique slash review slash analysis of Resident Evil 8. This is going to be kind of a long video, and I will absolutely spoil the living shit out of this video. But all along, for the first section, I will put a spoiler alert to let you know what time you can skip to and things like that. Because I'm going to go over. The spoilers at the beginning are pretty light, but once you get to a certain section, it does get a little on the heavier side, so I will post another warning there. But if you want to if you're asking, play the game. If you just want a quick review right here and now, it says, hey, is the game good? Should I get it? Well, yeah, it's good. If you're a fan of Resident Evil 7, or Resident Evil in general, you'll love this game. It's good. I like it. All in all, I would recommend it. Now, if you decide to watch this video without playing the game first, welcome to the video. I hope you guys enjoy. If not, like I said, there'll be a point to where I'll post right about here, where that you can skip to, so you can just get all the way and skip all the spoilers and just go to my overall opinion of the game in general. Sorry if I was rambling a bit. I'm just a little bit tired right now because I've been doing this like all day with this editing and everything, but I hope you guys enjoy what I have in store for you, and let's get on with the video. Okay, so Resident Evil 8 opens up with a fairy tale about a young girl going into the forest and meeting 4 different characters, which actually stands as a good allegory for what you, the player, will soon encounter, as each character is a good representation of the enemy you will fight. The visuals of the story are pretty great, are the quality of what you would see like something from Disney or Pixar, or even DreamWorks. Pretty good visuals. It is then revealed that the story you hear is a bedtime story that Mia is telling your daughter. Pretty fucked up story in my opinion. After a quick talk with Mia, she seems kind of snappy at you for no reason, which is later explained. I mean, she does seem kind of odd, but it is explained later. I will explain it a little bit later when we get to the more spoiler-heavy part of the video. Of course, I'll put spoiler alerts whenever we get to that. It is here where you're given Rose, the daughter, to put to sleep. And around this time, you are free to roam around you and Mia's house, which is a nice little segment, as there are lots of things to examine, like books and pictures, and even items that are here and there that are little nods to previous games, more importantly, RE7. After you return to Mia to have dinner, it is then revealed that this game takes place 3 years after the events of Resident Evil 7. So this game is more like a direct sequel. During a conversation, you, the player, are told how you got to the point of where you are. How Chris Redfield moved you guys to somewhere in Europe, Romania, and how you both have received military training and whatnot. Which is a nice explanation of how later in the game Ethan can handle guns and certain equipment in the ways he can. It doesn't take much time before shit hits the fan though, and Mia is killed in front of you by Chris. He then kidnaps Rose and you are knocked out and put into a van. I'll say now that already the voice acting and acting of the characters in general already seems like a step up from the previous game. As of right now, nothing makes sense, but it will later on. You then wake up to a crashed van with dead soldiers everywhere, and this is where the game truly begins. Here's one of the few parts in RE8, Resident Evil 8, that I truly feel an actual sense of dread. Walking through the dark forest. This, in my opinion, is where Capcom truly shines in this game, where the focus is more on horror than the action. I just wish that there were more parts like this in this game. After walking through the forest, you will come across the opening that reveals you to where you will be spending quite a bit of your time in the game, the village. Now I'll go ahead and start here by saying that in my opinion, Resident Evil 8 is more of a successor to Resident Evil 4 than a sequel to Resident Evil 7, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. And RE8 really wears its influence on its sleeve. Think about it. Both games start out roughly the same. You encounter a small village with a massive amount of enemies that the player is ill-prepared for. You find a shotgun in a house. After a timer runs out, a church bell rings and all the enemies disappear. It's pretty blatant, but I'm mostly okay with it. When you first enter the village, you are starting to see glimpses of enemies you will later be fighting until you enter the house and come across one of the locals to the village. After failing to get an explanation out of the guy, he gives you a gun and is killed, and thus starts your first real encounter with one of the new enemy types you will fight. The werewolves. Now, when I first heard about this reveal for Resident Evil 8, I was a bit skeptical about it. After finishing the game, I still don't know how I feel about it. Now, this game really doesn't fuck around. The Likings, or werewolves, we'll call them Likings now, are really tough enemies, and until you have a better weapon or a more upgraded weapon, more than one at a time can be quite a handful. I mean, I really don't know how to describe the difficulty of this game. I want to say it is harder, a little bit more hardcore, but at the same time, I only actually really died about 6 times in this game. And about 2 of those times was because I got stun locked by a boss. Now, the Lycans are tough, but just keep with the good old RE strategy and aim for the head and you should be okay. And if you're running low on ammo, it's usually not too hard to find some ammo or crafting materials lying around. Most of the enemies even drop a lot of crafting materials after you kill them. Now there are a few variants of the Likings. You have normal ones, you have ones with melee weapons, some with bows, and you have very large, kinda super Liking type that are really hard to kill. So with those guys, unless you have some serious firepower, it's usually just best to avoid them. Now before you can actually fight, one of the Likings actually bites off part of Ethan's hand, which he almost immediately bandages up, and then nothing else really happens with it. So it's kind of like they only did that for shock value, kind of like the part in Resident Evil 7 when Mia cuts off your hand, or when Jack cuts your leg off. I mean, yeah, it's shocking, it will take you off guard, but I mean, what's the point of it if it doesn't really affect the player, and just leaves me asking why. Like, why even do that if it's just going to immediately go away, and it's not going to affect gameplay in any sense? A little bit later, after being held up in a barn for a little bit of time, kind of like the part in RE4 with Carlos in the house, you will walk into one of the more open parts of the village with Likings everywhere. You really don't want to fight them, as you are not really prepared. You find a shotgun, and as said before, after a set time, a cutscene plays marking the end of the fight, but not without revealing one of the later bosses in the game. And after this, you come across a crazy looking old lady revealing just a little bit more about the story, wherein Rose is here in the village, and that someone named Mother Miranda has something planned with her. After this, you wander around some more and find a door that needs some items. One is right by in the church, and the other you have to look for. Here, if you look closely at the altar, the game kind of gives you a preview of the other bosses you will be encountering. After wandering around a little bit more, you will come across a house with actual people in it, actual characters, but don't get too attached to them. You then help them into another character's house where you are greeted by even more people. At first they are reluctant to trust you, but they do anyway, seeing as you helped one of their own. After listening to all the characters talk about how they're all gonna die, the father you help before begins to turn into a Liking and starts killing everyone. You try to take one of the characters with you to save in a sequence that is very reminiscent of a sequence in Resident Evil 7, but before you can save her, she dies too. Ethan does some pretty bad voice acting, if I do say so myself. I'll cover this a little bit later, but the character Ethan himself is really kind of a hit or miss for me. After escaping the burning house, you get your first real glimpse of Mother Miranda before she instantly disappears. You then make your way through the door with 2 keys. As you make your way around, you are attacked and taken by another boss, Heisenberg. It is here you will meet all the bosses, including Mother Miranda, for the first time. Pretty good scene all in all. It's good setting up for the hierarchy with all the characters. Lady Dimitrescu? Lady Dimitrescu is more of the higher up, while with Heisenberg, while is more of a buffoon, takes no one seriously, and the doll is kind of more of like a kid that's kind of just there. You are then thrust into a pretty insane chase scene that, if you're not paying attention, can kill you pretty quickly. Reminds me a lot of the opening scene of Dead Space 2. After escaping, you make your way to Lady D's castle. I'm going to call her Lady D now, Lady Dimitrescu, and are greeted by one of my favorite characters in the game, Duke the Merchant. I mean, there's not much I can really say about Duke. He's just basically the merchant from Resident Evil 4. He's a charismatic merchant that always appears randomly and sells you items like weapons, upgrades, recipes, and even more inventory space. A lot like the merchant from Resident Evil 4. Although there is some new stuff here, where later on in the game he can cook you food that will grant you permanent buffs, such as you have more health, you take less damage, so on and so forth. You can even sell items too, just be careful. Some of the items you can combine, just like in Resident Evil 4. But I like how in Resident Evil 4, or 7, sorry, they actually tell you in your treasure inventory, your treasure menu, if items are combinable or not. So you don't have to worry about trying to figure out or holding onto an item. If it just says valuable, you're going to sell it. If it says valuable combinable, you have to combine it first. All in all, I think Duke is a good addition. Now, as we continue to this part here, I'm going to advise you, if you haven't or if you plan to, play the game before we get to this part, because from here on out, we're going to go into the more spoiler-heavy territory of Resident Evil 8. So if you want to keep watching, I'm warning you, it's going to spoil the living shit out of it. But if not, you can pause it. I'll put a timestamp. I'll probably put it before the video too. So you can go ahead and go to more towards the end of the video where I don't really talk about spoilers and just talk more about things like gameplay, visuals, and stuff like that. Alright, that was your warning. 3, 2, 1, here we go. Now here we start with the castle section. And here we also start with some more Resident Evil 4 vibes. I mean, castle, come on, super tall person. In 4, it was a super short person. I mean, come on, Capcom, what are you doing here? Anyway, when you first enter the castle, you're going to explore around for quite a bit, but it doesn't take very long before you are caught and brought to Lady D and her 3 daughters. And man, I'm not going to lie, it took me the longest time to figure out that they were 3 separate daughters. Because I guess they're triplets or something. Instead of, because she like turns into these bee things and flies around, so I thought it was just like one of her and the other 2 were like clones of her that she made. Because she can kind of like teleport around. It took me the longest time to figure that out until like something Lady D said clarified that there are actually 3 separate daughters in one of the lines she actually says. So after a weird little sucky suck that Lady D gives you, which will be explained later, but kind of catches you off guard with how weird it is, you are strung up by these hooks through your hands that you immediately escape and heal yourself from because, of course, you do. And then the castle section truly begins. Now, unfortunately, I don't really have much to say about this section as there isn't too much that you have to do, honestly. It just basically boils down to just some kind of sort of boring scavenger hunt where you have to collect keys so you can collect keys so you can fight some mini bosses to collect these 4 masks. And dare I say it, the puzzles themselves that you have to go through and the boss fights with the 3 daughters are pretty disappointing and not very challenging at all. Even the tactic to kill all 3 daughters is exactly the same, whereas you get them into a light source by either blowing open a hole in a wall, open a window, or pull a lever to open like a roof type thing, and then you shoot them till they're dead. I mean, they are vampires, so it makes sense, I guess. I mean, there are a couple of standout moments in the castle, like the rooftop and where Lady D cuts off your arm. Do I need to even repeat myself with something like that when she cuts your hand off? But all in all, I can honestly say that the whole castle was an okay section in my opinion. It started to get kinda old pretty quick and started to overstay its welcome. I was especially kinda aggravated with the fight with the final daughter, as for some reason in the boss room, my PC just absolutely shits itself and I lose half my frame rate. I'll show you in this clip here. When I'm in the room, my frame rate melts, even if I'm like looking out into the hallway. But the second I step out of the room into the hallway, frame rate's back to normal. Can't really explain it. It's a little aggravating, but whatever, I guess. But after you defeat the daughters and find all 4 masks or heads, statue heads or whatever they are, you get to finally fight with. First off, let me be the one to say that I feel like Capcom really blew their load on this character. While she is definitely one of the highlights of the game, Capcom really made it seem like she would be a massive threat and have more of a presence in the game. Not just a Jack Baker wannabe that stalks you around, occasionally attacking you or catching you off guard. Unless you go into the safe room, which is kind of funny, honestly. I like her as a character. I mean, she is well written and well acted. And all that just feels like makes it feel like more could have been done with this character instead of just killing her after the first few hours of the game. It was a really missed opportunity, in my opinion. Now under a fight. After you get a knife that was briefly mentioned by a letter that you can very easily miss, you she catches you and gives you the old stabby stab. So you give her the old stabby stab back, which pisses her off, of course, and causes her to transform into this. I don't know what the fuck it is, but good boss design, Capcom. Really good job there. While the boss fight is pretty good, it's not a very hard or challenging boss fight. It's more the old same Resident Evil tactics with their boss fights, which isn't a bad thing. It's just the same. You basically run around on this rooftop, taking pop shots until she takes you to another rooftop where you do it again. It's her stage 2 until she dies. Pretty good fight, but in my opinion, it was just a little too simple, and I feel like it was a little too easy. Granted, I wasn't playing on the hardcore difficulty for the purpose of this review and analysis, but I didn't really have much trouble at all with this fight. Anyway, after the fight, you pick up this strange looking golden vial, and once again meet with the crazy old lady after she spouts some cryptic stuff with some riddles, and she basically explains that Mother Miranda wants to sacrifice Rose in order to resurrect her daughter that died 100 years ago. You also get a key to open doors to get you to the other bosses later in the game, and you move on. And if you pay attention, you'll see a pretty familiar looking symbol on the wall, along with the names and I guess the house symbols of the bosses. After leaving the area, you'll come across Duke once again, and he explains how the vial contains Rose's head and how the other lords have the other parts of her also in vials, and you have to fight them and get them back. Doesn't really make much sense, I know, but I'll explain that a little bit later towards the Mother Miranda fight at the end. After talking with Duke, he sends you to go find another part of the key that you have and return, where he then marks the other bosses for you to fight on your map. At this point, you do have the option to explore the village a little bit more to find treasures and I guess get more ingredients for Duke to cook for you, because at this point I believe in the game he now cooks for you. But once you're done, you need to just go on. For the sake of this, I mostly just mainlined the bosses and just did them one after another. You can't really do them out of order, so it's basically going to be kind of how I laid it out. Now this here is definitely one of my more favorite sections in the game. If not, it just might be the best section in my opinion, as this whole section does away with combat entirely and just subjects you to pure horror, showing us all that if Capcom really wanted to, they can still deliver on good horror. I found this part to be, in my opinion, the scariest part of the game by far, and the length of the section, while short, doesn't get boring or overstay its welcome like other parts in the game. When you enter the house, you can explore around a bit until you take an elevator down the stairs into the main area, where you get a first glimpse of the Dollmaker character, who then locks you in the puzzle room. A good section, but not very hard at all. Not very hard at all. After solving the puzzles, you are treated to one of the more terrifying enemies in the game, this baby thing that you have to run away from in the dark with the power out. You gotta find a breaker or whatever it is to turn the power back on and avoid this baby thing, which again isn't a very hard part, although it is pretty terrifying. And the moment where you think you're in the clear and you're starting to go back to where you need to go and the baby appears at the top of the stairs, shit in my pants. Once you get out of the basement, you are then treated to the boss fight with the Dollmaker, which isn't really a boss fight. I mean, it's literally a game of hide and seek, and if you take too long, you will just die. Kinda cheap in my opinion, but after finding the doll and you give it the old stabby stab 3 times in a row, you kill it and the fight is over, giving you the next Rose vial. After this next section, I really didn't like or much care for the whole section in its entirety, so I'm going to be mostly brief about this whole section. I just didn't really care much for how the boss fight takes place and the whole events leading up to it. Anyway, once you actually just grab the Rose vial, which makes me wonder why Ethan didn't just run out when you had the chance. Like, seriously, Ethan, you just got the vial. Why the fuck are you sticking around talking to the guy? But whatever. It's here you start to learn this guy is more of the boss on the lower end of the hierarchy. The one that no one really takes seriously. But anyway, after you take the vial, he leads you to a dam that you have to lower the water level of to proceed. But in order to do this, you have to get a crank to activate the windmill while dodging a giant fish. Huh. Where have I seen this before? Anyway, after dodging the fish and going through a timing puzzle, you get the crank to lower the water and go back to start the boss battle with this guy. Again, this fight is more of a standard RE style fight, run around damaging the boss until it dies, and the boss, this is actually the boss that stun locked me until I died, so this is the first time I actually died in the game. But after you kill him, you can move back onto the village, but not before being contacted by Heisenberg, the final boss, or next to final boss, saying that he can maybe help you. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, we'll see about that. Anyway, once you get back, you will start to see signs literally lining the village, telling you exactly where to go on to the next section. On your way to the next section, the industrial area, another RE4 trope, you go through a pretty challenging gauntlet of fighting hordes of lichens where you must have good ammo and weapons to get through easily. Once you get to the inner area, you'll come across an area that is what I believe an infinitely spawning area, or an area with infinitely spawning enemies. So you want to just try and just get through with not as much trouble or wasting that much ammo. And once you get through the gauntlet, you come across one of the better boss fights, in my opinion, with this massive Thor hammer-wielding motherfucker. Again, just shoot him till he's dead, and after you kill him, you get the final rose vial and get back to the ceremony site, where you then put in all the rose parts in a giant chalice that Ethan inexplicably can carry without issue. Found that kind of funny. This in turn lets you get to the final area you can unlock. This is another section that, in my opinion, is pretty good for the most part, but kind of does overstay its welcome after a while. But as you approach the factory, you get a chance to talk to Heisenberg, where he explains that he wants to use Rose as a weapon to kill Mother Miranda, all while being interrupted by God knows what. Oh, trust me, you'll fight it later. Heisenberg as a character is very good and surprisingly fleshed out, but unfortunately I cannot stand the voice actor himself. The voice actor himself, it almost sounds like he's trying too hard to make his voice sound like it does, the way it does. And Ethan's reaction goes more to the conversation, talking with him, goes more in line with my thought on him as a character. I feel a big disconnect with him, as a lot of the things in this game that he says or decides to do, I don't feel like me as a person would say or do. And the dialogue that Ethan has can go from astoundingly good to just absolutely god-awful. I mean, I don't know. I just don't really know if I like Ethan as a character. But after a brief chase scene, you are then unleashed into the factory. Now, I will say this now, but the design on the factory is absolutely perfect. Capcom really did a good job with this one. There's not a whole lot that happens though in this section. It's more of just this RE standard where you find one item to hit this switch, to get this key, to blah blah blah. A lot like the castle where you just run around finding keys and solving little puzzles here and there. While there are a couple of standout moments in this section, like a good variety of enemies, it does get kind of old after a while, and I was just at the point where I was just hoping that the whole section would end pretty soon. And after a while, you will get a key that lets you progress straight into the next boss fight with this chainsaw head thing. Pretty awesome boss design again. This fight was a little more interesting. Instead of just shooting it where you, like the normal RE standard, you actually have to let it charge you and miss to hit the wall, where you would shoot a weak point on its back, every so often avoiding it when it goes into a rage state. Kind of like another enemy in another RE game. Huh. I mean, hey, I'll stop comparing it to RE4 when the game doesn't do stuff that RE4 does. But anyway, after this fight, you make your way towards the elevator to escape, running again into Heisenberg, who after a short talk transforms into this crazy, monstrous machine fucking thing. Like, it's crazy looking. And after that, you run into Chris Redfield, who finally explains why he quote-unquote killed Mia. Spoiler, it was Mother Miranda. Which begs the question of why he didn't tell Ethan any of this before. And his explanation to why is absolutely piss poor. After this long talk, Ethan probably delivers the most cringy line of dialogue since probably something in RE1. I'll play it here.
Together. Damn straight we will. And when I find Miranda, she's a dead woman.
After this, Chris gives you this crazy fucking vehicle. That's right, a vehicle, which takes us to. That's right, a vehicle section in RE8, and it doesn't suck. I mean, sure, it's a little janky, but it's different, you know? And it's fun. You have a rocket launcher and a machine gun. They have infinite ammo. It's a power trip section, and it's done good. It's done well. It's not too long, but it's also not too short, which takes you also into the Heisenberg fight with the vehicle. Overall, this fight is definitely my favorite in the game, just because of how different and just straight fun it is. I mean, I love it. You basically drive around, shooting the boss, avoiding damage, hitting its weak points, standard RE stuff, until he knocks you off the vehicle, making you continue the fight on your own, normally, with your normal weapons. I mean, it's not super challenging again. You just avoid his charges and shoot him in the face until a cutscene plays and you blast Heisenberg back to 1996. After the fight, you are confronted by Mother Miranda, who tells you more about her motivation and how Rose is kind of like a sort of descendant, kind of from Evelyn from RE7 before she kills you? Yes, Ethan is dead. Well, kinda. I'll explain later. But for now, you are thrust into the shoes of Chris Redfield, who very slyly, might I add, reenacts a scene from Resident Evil 1. Kind of a cool little nod there, I liked it. This section is another power trip where you play as Chris with an uber powerful set of weapons that you go around, kind of like Call of Duty style, just shoot a bunch of liking, shoot a bunch of shit. It's a cool little section until you bomb the shit out of whatever the hell you bomb, whatever this thing is. I mean, this section is pretty awesome. It reminds me a lot of the boat section from Resident Evil 7, where you're running around with machine guns and gunning down molded and stuff. But it doesn't suck, unlike the boat section. After you bomb this thing, you jump down into this tunnel, fight another giant like before, but this time he has this crazy looking mace thing. This fight's a little bit more challenging as it's kind of the same as before, but instead you just try to shoot him in more soft, unarmored spots, mostly the back until he's dead. Yeah, his armor just bounces off most weapons, so try to aim carefully. You can also bomb him again with your little laser pointer thing. And after you kill him, you get to find the Megamycete. Megamycete? Sorry, I'm not going to pronounce this properly. Megamycete, I think. And plant a bomb on it, ending the section. You then find Mia and take her with you to safety. So as it turns out, Ethan isn't actually dead. Who would have guessed? But the reason why is actually kind of cool. You have this kind of weird out-of-body experience type section where you talk to Evelyn from Resident Evil 7, where she explains that Jack Baker actually killed you in Resident Evil 7, but you got infected with the mold and was still kind of alive somehow, which finally explains the criticisms I had with the game before, like with how the fuck can Ethan keep going on after having limbs chopped off and stabbed and all that kind of shit like that. I mean, I'll take it as a reason, as an excuse. I mean, kind of a cool twist. All in all, good little part that explains quite a bit. Sure, I'm not explaining it to its fullest, but you get the picture. Ethan's kind of sort of dead. He's part molded, something along those lines. But yeah. Anyway, after this out-of-body experience with Evelyn, you awaken in the Duke's caravan, where he takes you to Mother Miranda to start the final boss fight. Now, I'm not really going to talk too in-depth with this particular boss fight because it's not a super complicated fight. It's just more standard RE. I mean, it's a Resident Evil boss fight. It's just slightly more challenging, I guess. I mean, it was okay. It was the only boss fight that was actually killing me, and it was a little bit challenging, but it wasn't really like that for the right reason. It was mostly because I didn't really have enough ammo and had to finish the boss off with a sniper rifle. I mean, the game literally just had you fight a boss Heisenberg, and then pretty much immediately tosses you into another boss fight. So I just didn't really have that much ammo. So a little trick, if you have anything that you haven't sold yet that you don't really need, go ahead and sell as much as you can to Duke and try and upgrade your weapons or get as much ammo or health as possible. This fight isn't incredibly complex. She just has a few stages that you need to fight through. She'll change her form and do different types of attacks. Sometimes she does this lunging attack that can actually do quite a bit of damage. Sometimes she spawns these weird gooey ball things that you have to shoot before they explode or they'll burn you, and so on and so on. Nothing crazy hard, just basically shoot her till dead. Now, I'm sorry that I don't talk too much about Mother Miranda herself like I have the other characters per se. It was mostly because she just wasn't really that fleshed out. And her motives were pretty simple. She had a daughter that died 100 years ago. She wanted to take Rose to bring her back because Rose has all these crazy fucking powers or whatever that she got because she's like part Evelyn, part molded. Not exactly sure what that one. Anyway, after you kill her, you get Rose back. But Ethan starts like rotting away, I guess, like all the bosses did after you kill them. He's starting to like hard up like the mold does when it dies. And as you're escaping with Chris, Ethan decides to sacrifice himself to save everyone else, which doesn't really make sense because of Chris's bomb. I mean, the bomb has a remote detonator. So why does Ethan think that he needs to take the detonator from Chris and stay back and sacrifice himself? I mean, couldn't he just go with them? Because he's like part mold, so he might be able to heal. I don't know. The whole part just didn't really make much sense, and it feels like it was just all. He didn't need to do it. It happened for no reason, and I don't really like it. I mean, at the same time, I just couldn't take this cutscene seriously at all because Capcom was trying to hide really hard, but mind you, they're trying really hard to hide Ethan's face, so in the cutscene, his face is always turned away, which really absolutely ruined the whole mood of the cutscene for me. It was just kind of bad. It just completely ruined the mood. So Chris takes Rose to Mia on a helicopter, and they escape. Sorry, while Ethan blows up the bomb. So yes, Ethan is actually dead. Roll credits. After the credits, we are treated actually to a pretty nice scene of an older Rose visiting Ethan's grave for his birthday before being called by an agent from Umbrella? Not exactly sure. I think it's Umbrella. I don't really know. I don't know. She has, and anyway, they say that she has some work to do. And after a display of some crazy teenage angst, she reveals that she has like these mold type powers. So I'm guessing that she will be the protagonist in Resident Evil 9, and maybe you'll have some like powers that you can use or some kind of abilities that would make it kind of interesting. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Resident Evil 9. Anyway, she gets in the car with the agent, and then they drive off to an Ethan? Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and close off with my closing thoughts of the game and just kind of summarize all in all how I feel about the game. The game is, for the most part, pretty good. I would almost say great at some points. Well, it does have some sections that I feel do drag on and overstay the welcome, and some annoying things that happen here and there. Overall, I do feel like the game is good, and I guess I would probably say I do recommend it for people. You know, the gameplay and the level. I mean, the gameplay is if you love RE7, the gameplay is mostly the same. If not, maybe slightly fine-tuned. The level design is pretty great. The village is great. The castle looks awesome. It looks like a castle. While the industrial area does look like that too. Every area looks like how it should, and it has nice detail and everything. And the graphics, bar none, this is probably one of the best looking games that I've played in a long time. It's absolutely outstanding. Plus of including how good this game can run. Now I am running on sort of a good PC, but I'm also running the game at over 100 FPS pretty easily, up to like 140 or 150 plus FPS, depending on what's going on the screen. So you won't need an absolute tank of a PC to run this properly. I am playing I should have mentioned before this, I am playing on the PC version of the game. But all in all, the characters were pretty okay, even if I feel like you don't see the characters or meet them enough to where they're super fleshed out. Some of the bosses are pretty fleshed out and they have some good character, although some of them I feel like kind of missed the mark. I will have a critique about Ethan himself as a character. As I said before, I just feel like there's a lack of a connection between specifically me and the character Ethan. While Ethan's reactions or what he says or what he does or the decisions he makes to certain situations in the game, I feel like me personally are situations or things where I wouldn't do said thing. I'm just like, why the fuck would he do that? Why the fuck would he say that? Why doesn't he just shut the fuck up sometimes and listen when people try and talk instead of constantly asking what the hell is going on? The sound design in the game is pretty good. I give it credits for that. I mean, it does its job, you know. If you have good headphones, it sounds good. You can kind of track audio, but you don't really need to. I mean, everything does its job. It's another good RE game. Like I said before, it is more of a successor to Resident Evil 4, I would say, than a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7, as it does take a lot of elements from Resident Evil 4 and puts that into this game, which, again, isn't a bad thing. I just feel like it should be a little bit more original in certain areas. It was just too many times where I was playing and I was like, oh, this is like this section from Resident Evil 4, or this is like this section from Resident Evil 7, or this reminds me of this game, or this, you know? While it did have some original ideas, like with the likings and other characters, it doesn't really fully explain why the viruses or the things turn them specifically into those instead of just zombies like they have. Maybe they have and I just haven't looked into it good enough. But all in all, I feel like it has enough originality to stand out as its own game. It's another good Resident Evil mainline game. And all in all, I would probably say I recommend it. Especially if you are a fan of Resident Evil, especially 7, the whole first person thing. There's already some crazy mods that I can't show on YouTube, if you guys know what I'm talking about. The game is good. I strongly recommend it. Anyway, this video took a lot of time to make. I probably put more effort into this video than my other ones, like my Halo and stuff. And I still, like I said, I still got Halo coming, by the way. Don't worry, guys. Halo is still coming. The more Halo games. But, I'm glad I can share this and my thoughts on you. I will be doing more videos on this, like I said, in this format, more of a review / analysis type. And I'm kind of enjoying what I'm doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or suggestions on what I should do next, just leave a comment. I'm going to post or put links to my Discord, my Twitter, my Twitch and stuff down in the description below. Where you can follow me there. I'm going to try and post stuff on Twitch. It's just been kind of busy lately with this YouTube stuff, so I haven't been on Twitch in a while. But I'll try to change that. So anyway, thank you guys for joining. Hope you all have a good one. And get dead. See you in the next video, guys.